Open the podcast bay doors, Hal.
Hello everyone, and welcome to episode 181 of Welcome to Geektown. I'm your host, Kurt Onstead. I've been a proud geek all my life, being into role-playing games, board games, sci-fi, fantasy, and especially superheroes and comics. And I want to help others join me in those pursuits, but I found that sometimes people can get overwhelmed or feel left out because they don't already have what some consider the requisite knowledge to be considered a fan. And that's where Welcome to Geektown comes in. Here you can ask your questions without feeling like a gatekeeper is calling you out for not yet being fully versed in every aspect of your new interest. As it's the end of another month, I want to make sure I shout out my patrons. Mike Sterling, Justin Bailey, Lillian Sam Breen, Jesse Clark, Ricky Garvin, Rob Garrison, Aaron Woodward, Aaron Borst, Carla Hoffman, Julio Herrera, and Matthew Saint. Thank you very much, as always. And if you want to join in with helping the show out, it's just $1 per month, and that gets you this monthly shout-out, as well as audio outtakes and full scripts of every written show. We've reached the 21st century with the lesser-known X-Men series, and the decade from 2000 to 2009 is the one where the most characters joined the team ever, the majority of whom fall into this category. So we'll be here for a little while. Let's get started. Since Giant Size X-Men number 1, the X-Men have had representatives from all over the world. But Neil Shara is the first to come from India. Neil first appeared in X-Men number 100 by Chris Claremont and Lionel Francis Yu, although we don't learn his backstory until X-Men Unlimited number 27 a few months later. Coming from a rich family who owned a large tea garden, or tea estate as it's also called, Neil had a pretty easy life growing up, until his older brother Sanjeet went missing. Sanjeet had decided to investigate the disappearances in the poorer parts of the city, but became one of the victims of Bastion, who had been taking people for his Omega Sentinel experiments. Neil did his best to track down his brother at that point. When Neil, and the private detective that had been assigned to keep him safe, were also taken for the same reason, the process of trying to turn Neil into an Omega Sentinel activated his mutant powers, blowing up the building. Neil escaped, with his brother using his last bit of free will to sacrifice himself. Neil ended up heading to Muir Island. His parents were apparently friends with Moira McTaggart, who runs the facility, where he met the X-Men and was invited to join the team. While he originally didn't have great control of his ability to create hot plasma bursts, he eventually learned that control under the mentorship of Bishop while part of the Extreme X-Men team. During his tenures on those two teams, Neil pursued relationships with first Psylocke, then Lifeguard, another member of the Extreme X-Men. Now, you'll notice up until this point, I haven't mentioned Neil's codename. He does have one, but there's a little bit of controversy around it. Neil, for reasons never explained in the comics that I could find, took the name Thunderbird, first used by John Proudstar. Check episode 149 for more on the original. A Thunderbird is a mythical creature from multiple Native American societies. I'm specifically using Native American rather than Indian to avoid confusion, and because I was taught that was the most respectful term. Apologies to any people indigenous to North America who prefer something different. So it makes sense that John Proudstar, an Apache, would take this as a codename. However, for a man from India to use Native American mythology for the source of his X-Men name seems like a weird cultural appropriation, especially when compounded by the fact that he was created by a white man, at least the writer, The artist who co-created him is Filipino. Having no connection to either the mythology itself or the first man to take that code name seems like a misstep to me. Originally, he was planned to be named Agni, after the Hindu god of fire, but that was vetoed in order to avoid offending followers of the Hindi religion. While I think they made the right decision there, it feels like they could have come up with some middle ground to either reference his heritage or find a codename not tied to any particular background. In any case, Neil was later recruited by X-Corp during the Krakoan era, due to his abilities being able to power the machinery that the corporate side of the X-Men were inventing in order to help negotiate recognition by other countries around the world. However, he hasn't been seen in the post-Hellfire Gala Massacre era, so his current status is unknown. Cable joined the team in the same month that Neil's origin was revealed, June of 2000, in Uncanny X-Men number 381, but I'm going to skip over him as, with his movie and animated appearances, I think he's popular enough to fall outside the lesser-known status. So our next X-Men member is Danielle, or Danny, Moonstar, also known as Mirage. Like Cannonball, mentioned in an earlier installment of this feature, Danny first appeared in The New Mutants, and was seen in the movie of the same name. First taking the codename Psyche, she later changed it to Mirage. With her telepathic powers, she's able to not only read minds, but also project people's worst fears into their heads. As she gained more control over her powers, she could also project their wants or needs into their minds as well. While these visions were visible to others, only the target would treat them as real. In addition to these powers, Mirage could also focus her abilities into arrows made of psionic energy that could stun someone by forcing them to relive a traumatic event or instill nightmares of their worst fears. Again, as her training improved her control over her powers, these arrows could later affect physical matter, the same way other mutant energy blasts can. While Danny, a native Apache, was originally somewhat xenophobic, especially towards white men, she formed close relationships with the rest of her New Mutant team, who helped her when the Demon Bear attacked her in order to possess her. The Demon Bear storyline is one of the best-known New Mutant tales, and was loosely adapted for the movie. Not long after this, the team was taken to Asgard against their will. During this adventure, Danny found herself in Valhalla, and rescued a Pegasus there from a group of hunters. Danny bonded with the creature, named Brightwind, and due to this bond, received some of the gifts of the Valkyrie, the mythical Viking warrior women that escorted the worthy dead to Valhalla, which now allowed Danny to see the death glow around people who were fated to die soon, and sometimes prevent said death. After many various adventures with the New Mutants, Danny and Brightwing decided to stay in Asgard and take on the Valkyrie mantle full-time. During her time away, the New Mutant team became the more militant X-Force under the tutelage of Cable, which she joins after a brief time working undercover with S.H.I.E.L.D. During her time on this team, she loses much of her Valkyrie abilities, and her steed was killed by a villain named Rainfire. It's around this time that Danny decided to leave X-Force, after a new mentor named Pete Wisdom was recruited by the rest of the team. And she joined the X-Men, first as a part-time member, then as a teacher to a new squad of New Mutants. Later, during the House of M storyline, Danny was one of the many mutants who lost their powers, and was subsequently kicked out of the X-Men's mansion. While Danny didn't have her powers at this point, her experience with creating people's fears were useful as a teacher to the initiative trainee named Trauma, who had similar abilities, being able to transform himself into the greatest fear of those nearby. Danny has since had both her Valkyrie abilities and her mutant powers restored to her. The former by making a deal with Hela, the latter through a convoluted storyline involving a techno-organic virus she was infected with, then cured of. She has been a member of the Defenders, a reformed version of the original New Mutants team, and more recently, after the Hellfire Gala, Mirage found herself, along with fellow mutants Magic, Dust, Typhoid Mary, and Marrow, in Vanaheim, the realm of the Dark Elves in Norse mythology, where she fought the sorceress Saturnine, with the help of some Asgardian warriors, before returning to Earth. She's currently one of the 12 mutants who is fighting for the mantle of the Heir of Apocalypse in the miniseries of the same name. So she may be going through another big change in status very soon, but you'll have to go check out those issues yourself if you want to find out what that is. Finally, for this episode at least, we come to Sage. Sage is one of the many mutants to become important more recently, but to have their backstory tie into the earliest origins of the X-Men through various retcons. She first appeared in Uncanny X-Men number 132 by Chris Claremont and John Byrne, where she's seen as a nameless secretary to one of the members of the Hellfire Club, later named Tessa, in the storyline that led into the Dark Phoenix saga. Decades later, in the first volume of the Extreme X-Men book, Tessa was revealed to have been recruited by Charles Xavier around the same time he founded the X-Men School, in order to spy on the Hellfire Club. Sage's mutant abilities are mostly connected to her computer-like brain, which has not only perfect recall, but also the ability to truly multitask and to master any skill with just a single lesson. Among other talents, she's known to be an expert engineer, a hacker, fluent in over 100 languages, and an expert in both hand-to-hand combat and firearms. These abilities make her a perfect spy, although she's shown to be frustrated with this status and wants to be more heroic. She gets that chance when she joins Storm's Extreme X-Men, although she still finds herself more often in a support position rather than in the field. After being part of that Extreme team for the book's entire 46-issue run, she helps the main team from the carriage house of the Xavier Institute. Since Xavier is not running the team at the time, her anger with the professor at being relegated to a spy rather than a hero along with the rest of the X-Men doesn't prevent her from working with them. Later, Sage discovers the Hellfire Club is reforming under her former boss, Sebastian Shaw. Without informing the rest of the team, she takes it upon herself to re-infiltrate the organization, and through her machinations, allows Sunspot, Roberto da Costa, formerly of the New Mutants, to take control of the club, and stays on to advise him and hopefully prevent him from being corrupted by the power of the organization. Sometime later, she abandons that position, first joining Excalibur, and then has a span of time where she joins two dimension-hopping teams. First the New Exiles, and then the Multiversal X-Men. Eventually, she returned to her home dimension, also known as Earth 616, where she joined most other mutants on the island nation of Krakoa, where she was the girl in the chair for that version of X-Force, as well as helping with the gateway system that allowed mutants to travel to and from Krakoa to any other place with a Krakoan gateway. After X-Force's first leader, Beast, was revealed to have lost his moral compass and fled Krakoa rather than face charges, Sage took over as leader of the team up until the Hellfire Gala massacre. Most recently, she's been seen in a former X-Force base during the Sabretooth War storyline that wrapped up the current volume of the Wolverine title. Where she ends up from there is anyone's guess, but as powerful as she is, I'm sure she won't stay on the sidelines for long. Next time we broach this topic, we'll talk about one of two Zorns, in addition to Chamber and Stacy X. Unless I hear otherwise from you listeners, I'm going to skip over Emma Frost, aka the White Queen, as I think she's well known enough to not need a refresher on. But if you think I'm wrong on that, let me know. And of course, if you have any other topics you'd like to hear me discuss, or general feedback, you can email those to welcometogeektown, all spelled out, @gmail.com. Or you can go to the website, welcome to, the number 2 in this case, geektown.com, and click the Submit a Question link if you'd prefer to remain anonymous. Other contact options include facebook.com/welcometogeektown, Twitter @geektownpodcast, Mastodon @welcometogeektown@mastodon.social, or Blue Sky @welcometogeektown.bluesky.social. Also, if you'd like to support the show directly, why not become a patron at patreon.com/welcometogeektown for just $1 per month to get access to full scripts of the shows, audio outtakes, and a monthly shoutout. You can also help the show grow by subscribing and giving a 5-star review over on Apple Podcasts to join the Geektown City Council, which helps other people find the show so we can all tell them, welcome to Geektown, population, us. Welcome to Geektown is written, narrated, edited, and produced by me, Kurt Onstead. Theme music is by Aaron Levitz, logo art by Archie Santana. All of their sound clips are the copyright material of their respective owners, and no infringement is intended, falling under fair use.